I am with Erica Brown, as Corey and I are usually every week. Corey is not with us. Hi, Erica. It's nice to see you, even solo.
Great to see you, Heather. Always.
And I understand you have three really big stories in the Manchester cricket this week. You decide where we start.
Okay, we have kind of a stuffed agenda this week with the paper, but that's a good thing. Yeah, why don't we start with regional dispatch? Is that okay?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Okay.
What's
So
going on?
regional dispatch has been on the plate for a while for the town. The town has been looking for ways to sort of streamline and save money, really. It's cost savings. And the state has made it really tempting to move to the North Shore Regional Dispatch Center, which is kind of known as like the North Shore Dispatch 911. That's what they call it. There's four communities that are currently in the consortium. That's Essex, Wenham, Middleton, Topsfield, and Amesbury. The center has a little bit of a tough, challenging past. It used to be run by the sheriff's department in Middleton at the Middleton jail off 62. And let's just say it was mismanaged. And as a result, the center got a little bit of a bad reputation, but then the state took it over, has completely refurbished it, and it's running properly now. And now there are, communities that are in it, and they're looking to grow it. I do know that Ipswich and North Andover are also actively looking to join, along with Manchester. And all of this was the subject of a public hearing last week that was attended by about 70 people. And it was pretty tightly managed by the BOS because they expected that it was controversial. There have been a lot of op-eds. There's been an op-ed from the union rep for all of the current employees associated with the Manchester Dispatch. They don't want to lose their jobs. Let's just call it what it is. And then also there was a little bit of a kind of thing in the background that Todd Fitzgerald, the chief of police here, who grew up in Manchester, he is not for regionalization, whereas Jason Cleary, the department chief, is for regionalization. So it's been easy for observers to kind of maybe act like it's a police versus fire department thing, but it's really not. It's not. And Chief Fitzgerald was on last Thursday, and he said, "Listen, this is not an issue of us versus them. We're together in lockstep on this. So let's just talk about sort of the the actual pros and cons of actually moving to Middleton."
So let's start with some pros.
A pro that is brought is that the technology is better with the regionalized system,
Mhm.
and that's because technology doesn't, technology is perfect, right? In terms of perfect information based on the data that it has. And that's what people who are against it bring up. They say it's only as good as the data, and nobody knows our own community like our own community. And we had one guy who actually said, this guy Anton, who spoke up, and he said, "I can't see how a regional system could possibly know the nooks and crannies of our community." And so that's sort of that's the discussion as well. Other pros include the fact that you don't need to pay to upgrade on software, which I know is a technology thing, but it's a separate technology thing. There is a dedicated software that's about location, GPS oriented things, and record recording and all this stuff. It's a specialized software, and it's expensive. And like any other software, you want to be able to upgrade all the time. And if you go into a regionalized system, you get that upgrade kind of built in. I'll give you a great example actually of that. In the fire department side, one guy spoke up and said that there is a frequency that's used by fire departments in the North Shore and in southern New Hampshire that the regionalized system doesn't monitor. And that's a big problem. That's against it. But Chief Cleary, who's familiar with the system, he spoke up and said they're aware of that challenge and they're upgrading it already. So it's that kind of building in the upgrades that is a pro for doing something regionalized.
So what's Chief Fitzgerald's main objection?
I think that he thinks that once you go regional, you lose control and it's very easy. It's very hard to get it back. That's basically the bottom line. I also think that he's looking out for the people who work for him. That said, he really said, listen, the number one thing is clarity. We just want clarity. Make a decision. because it's bad for morale. It's and it's not a good thing. So we just need to make a decision, and that decision is going to come in September. It's going to be by the BOS. The voters are not going to get to vote on this, which has been a misunderstanding from some people. But they are going to have one more public forum before September, so I expect that'll be next month.
Mm. Well, we will definitely be following up on that. That's really interesting.
Yeah.
So you have more news on Black Earth composting or news story?
Well, briefly, I do actually, because we talked last week and you actually asked me the question. You said, what's so great about the technology? Because it's a $1.5 million composting facility that's going to be processing, once it's up a month, 30 tons, 30 tons of compost and food material a week. Take that in for a second. It's a big operation.
Yeah.
And the truth is that Black Earth is already getting up to that area, but they're doing it in a primitive location in the limited commercial district on School Street. And that's where you get the odor and all this other stuff. Well, all the technology, they're going to have conveyor belts. They're going to have a separate drop-off system. It's going to convey. It's going to be a covered, almost tented, big warehouse system. That's what it kind of feels like. And in that, they're going to have biofilters and all sorts of things. It's going to be a pretty big operation. 12 to 15 trucks in the fleet, but it's really organized, use the best of technology. It's going to, in the end, take up, from my calculation, about 65% of the area for the transfer station. So it's really going to become first a composting facility and then the transfer station, which is kind of an interesting change. But it's all been permitted. It's all good. It's all done. And honestly, that bike and ped committee that I had attended when we talked was really about the fact that the transfer station itself is like on a knob of land surrounded by places that are popular with bikers and hikers. You've got Gravelly Pond, which is the water, the water supply for all of Manchester, and the Essex Woods, which is directly to the east. You've got wooded swampland, acres and acres of wooded swampland owned by the MECT just to the north. And then you have the Gordon College Woods, which just to the south or to the east, I guess, which has trails, and also the MECT has trails too, outside of that kind of swamp, wooded swamp. So that's why they cared about it. It's kind of interesting, and they use the best of technology. It's going to be a really awesome thing.
So just to finish this point, there has been a stumbling block to the state funding for Black Earth to make this move, but they have pretty much amended that, right?
Yes, in what happened, wrong in why. So it wasn't blocked. What happened was the town, because in the end, Black Earth's going to get a 20-year lease out of this with escalations and with re-ups. And the reason why is Black Earth's going to pay for it, to build it and to run it. And it's going to be owned by the town. So yeah. So there's that, number one. And they were going to have this $1.5 million, about $400,000 plus another $200,000. So maybe half was going to come through a state grant and through matching funds from the town. And then Black Earth was going to make up the balance of that. Well, that state grant, which was $400,000, it had to be applied for by the town with the state while construction was underway, something like that. Mm-hmm. And because it wasn't there and the timing was off, they lost the ability to apply for the grant. And here's the good news. Like I told you last week, Black Earth started a GoFundMe page. I didn't think it was going to get a lot of traction. They've gotten 2,200 donors and they've raised over $300,000.
All right, let's hear it for composting. I'm a big fan.
Well, composting, here's the other thing. Here's what nobody talks about, and that I think is really interesting. The state has mandated that restaurants compost. That happened a couple of years ago. And that's why Black Earth has a business model, because they don't make their money off people like us. They make their money off of restaurants who have to comply with the laws and the new regulations. Do you think that the state isn't going to keep going and make municipalities comply with composting? It's too good for the environment. First of all, composting eats carbon dioxide and makes oxygen. Does that sound like something we want? Yes. And it's also heavy. Food waste is heavy and it doesn't belong in landfills. And so if you get rid of it, one, the whole zero waste lifestyle, which we're all going towards. It's a big part of the equation. And then the other thing is that heavy material. Do you want to put it in a truck and pay to move it to Haverhill every week?
Right. Exactly. Exactly.
Having composting an operation within our reach, and by that I also mean the rest of Cape Ann, by the way,
Right.
is kind of a good thing.
It's a really good thing. And not to mention building soil, replenishing soil, which is such an important element to that. So, but we have one more great story to cover.
We do, and I'll be quick about it. I know that I'm never quick.
No,
Anyway,
tell me.
yeah, Olivia Turner just did this delightful feature on a buoy, a duck decoy Carver named Bob Brophy, who is a legend in Essex. I was unfortunately unfamiliar with him. He has carved since he was 14 years old. He's had this singular obsession with duck hunting in the Merrimack River Valley and that whole area. And he is a self-taught decoy carver, and he is a master at it. In his life, he puts a little number under each one. He's over 3,000 in his lifetime. And she wrote a great story that started with the fact that these specialty boats, these duck hunting boats, one called a Joba Flat and the other one called a Great Bay hunting boat, both are unique. One is unique to a designer in Newburyport, and the other one is unique to southern New Hampshire. He's been collecting them, and because he's getting older, he started to kind of want to find a home for them and discard them. And a couple, the Shillings, Sheila and Jack Shilling in Essex, came across them. They knew what they were. Came across them actually at the dump, retrieved the boats, and actually got back together with their friend. They knew what they were. They were friends with Bob Brophy, and they went back to him and said, "Don't throw these away. Let's find new homes for them." And Olivia, we got a great story out of it with beautiful images. So I encourage people to read about it. And by the way, he also taught Daniel Day-Lewis how to carve.
No way. When he was filming The Crucible?
Yes, he was an extra in The Crucible. He actually ad-libbed a line in it that ended up in the movie because the director liked it so much. And Daniel Day-Lewis would come to his studio, and he gave him all the materials to learn how to carve, taught him how to do it. And it's what apparently Daniel Day-Lewis used to do on his off time on set.
That is such a great story. Everything about that story I just love. Thank you very
Feel
much.
good.
Yeah. So we will see you next week. And thanks for all this.
Yes. Until next week.
Thanks.